Happy New Year. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Okay, hey, welcome everybody who's here and those who aren't yet to join. If you're watching on the recorded version, I guess, welcome. I'm Pete in one of these boxes. I don't know which, it's backwards. So that way, I guess, to me is Vince. And then
Good
down
evening.
there is, that's Vince Coakley. And this is Nick Craig.
Hey.
And so Nick is the newest addition to the lineup. He does the 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. program. So I see behind you, is that a home studio that you're in? You just decorated with Carolina Journal.
This is I am high atop the Carolina Journal offices. Movie magic allows that to happen dark and early every morning.
All right, so the producer Bernie, thank you, Bernie. By the way, he's behind the scenes. Maybe he'll pop in every now and again or show us pictures of his dog. And he will. He and Vince had this idea. They were in agreement on it. I'm abstaining, but they say for the rookie initiation, you should lead the entire live stream.
Sure. I mean, I'm great at talking and running my mouth. It's gotten me relatively far, so I think I can. I think we can handle an hour, right?
Of course.
Yeah. If you want to, that's totally up to you. Vince, have you already done one of these for the Talktoberfest this month?
Absolutely. Oh, well, not this time around. This is the first one this fall.
So your mic is. Did you change your mic setting? Because you're like, it sounds very room noise-esque. Did that change?
Oh, that worked out real well. Now he's completely silent.
That is odd. I don't know what happened in that amount of time. Let's see what is going on.
It does sound. Yeah, I mean, we can still hear you. I thought it was a richer sound while we were in the green room or whatever.
That's really odd. I will try to remedy that in.
No, don't touch anything.
You can lose everything all together. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Right.
Vince has to leave. Magically, he's gone for the rest of the evening. How did this happen?
He can never get the mic working again. No, we can still hear you. It just sounded different to me, but I don't. What do I know? So Sarah is here. Hello, Sarah, and Steve and Lori, and is it Diva or Deva? Hello, welcome, and Ken. Hello from Monroe. Steve in Indian Trail here. Okay, it's not like the call-in show. You don't have to say where, but you can say where you're from. That's okay. It's totally
Steve
fine.
West of the Rockies.
West of the Rockies. Hello. And Lily just checked in. Adam is here. Hello. So if you all have questions, put them into the chat box there, and we'll try to keep up. I'm not great at doing that. Maybe Vince and Nick are better. So I don't know if well, I came across something before, right before we came on here, and so I was curious what you guys think. Being that you are from media, you are in media, we are media, but we like to bash media, especially legacy outlets and such. So I saw, did y'all see the Gallup polling on trust in media that came out?
I did. Yeah, it's pretty stunning.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So let me go ahead and see.
I'm terribly shocked.
Right. Let me see. Bernie, I'm going to share the screen here so people can see the chart. And boom. All right. So now, okay, there you go. Look at that. Wow. Trust in media. So, all right. So
look at my glasses. I can't see the percentages. They're so tiny there on the screen.
There you go. Can I make this thing bigger? Let's see.
Oh, that's
open in new tab. Oh, that's a little bit better. That's bigger. But you can't see that. I'd have to share. Hang on, let me see.
I think it's clear. It's clear enough. It's just the chart is in the percentages are drastically low. But I guess as Vince said, he's not necessarily shocked.
So yeah, so if you're looking at this on your phone, you probably can't see it at all. So it says this was the question that Gallup asked. They've been asking it since 1972, when I think Vince, you were born, right? 1972.
A few years before that, so okay. I was about 7 years old.
All right, so I wasn't born yet. Nick definitely wasn't born yet. So they've been asking it for a while. So in general, how much trust and confidence do you have in mass media, such as newspapers, TV, and radio, when it comes to reporting the news fully, accurately, and fairly? a great deal, a fair amount, not very much, or none at all. So they apparently combined. So this top line here, this green line that's just constantly going down, that's a great deal / fair amount. So they combine those two, and that is now at 31%. Next up is not very much. That's the solid blue line in the middle. That is at 33%. And then the dotted blue at the bottom is 36, not or a none at all. So I guess, right, like you can combine these two, 36 and 33, and you're at 69% that say not very much or none at all, which is astounding. So, Vince, to what do you attribute this?
I attribute this to spectacles like the one that I have seen repeatedly over the weekend. I've got to tell you, as much as I've seen media bias, and there have been conversations about this for years, this badgering of candidates, just the fact checking and the sanctimonious correcting of the candidates, I was just blown away. I mean, I can't sit and watch. I mean, I was just saying this. If you listen to my show this morning, I just absolutely skewered Martha Raddatz. I've always liked her as a reporter. I mean, in terms of going out and covering stories, when I watched her in this segment badgering JD Vance, I just thought to myself, this is an abomination. This isn't journalism. You know, are you going to, you know, if we asked you the question 50 times, you know, are you going to continue to not answer whether you think that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election? And I'm sitting here thinking, this is a mainstream news media that was complicit in covering up for our president, our current president, and his mental acuity issues. They've covered this up for more than 3 years. They've helped to do this. And they think the single most important question is a conversation about 2020. I don't care. And I think you'd have a hard time just if you picked random people out in the community. How many people out there really care what Donald Trump thinks about 2020? I mean, it's just these folks are just incredibly tone deaf. And the other question, the question, what was there was another question raised. Oh, it was trying to fact check him on the issue of
the apartment complexes,
by gangs. And I'm thinking to myself, how many communities, I mean, how many apartment complexes is it appropriate for a foreign gang to take over? And you're going to correct, I don't care who it is. And if that's your concern about how it was expressed and, oh, they've got it all under control now. And I'm thinking, where do you live? What planet do you live on? Those are the kinds of things. And now it's kind of like, I think it's reached a fever pitch, which is something we can talk about later on. But I think repeatedly seeing these kinds of bias displayed over and over again, after a while, how can you have confidence in these folks? How do you?
So what do you think, Nick?
Well, I think to the point that was just made, the 2020, and let's be to kind of answer the question, who's the only one talking about the 2020 election? It's the mainstream media. I mean, anytime they can get a microphone or a camera in front of not even an elected Republican space, but just any random person that goes, "Hi, I am a registered Republican," the first question out of their mouth is, "Well, do you think the 2020 election was stolen? Do you think the 2020 election was rigged?" It's the first thing that's out of their mouth. But then when you saw the back and forth over these apparent apartment or condo complexes, and I thought JD Vance answered it the best you could. This is what we're talking. Like, it's okay for us to be talking about 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 of these complexes being overrun by street gangs from portions of South America, and that's an okay conversation to have, and we're fact checking on Trump. I thought his response to it was phenomenal, and I guess he's probably riding a little bit of that high from the vice presidential debate when he was just absolutely slugging at those moderators for the kind of nonsense that they were pulling. And he's found his avenue with that. And what I've seen and obviously a lot of this is algorithm based, but you open up Facebook or Instagram, you see the reels, and it's just JD Vance and Republicans just skewering the media in a variety of avenues. And obviously that's the stuff that they know I want to watch, but you can only imagine what kind of content like that is being served to other people. That stuff has an impact absolutely over a period of time.
So is that just so thinking outside of our bubble is because those numbers indicate an erosion of trust among Democrats too. And so they may have been watching that interview with JD Vance and cheering Martha Raddatz and thinking she really got the best of him. One of the things I've learned is people see different things. Vince always says, "Do not hear what I am not saying." It's a great line because people do, and they see stuff that I don't see. So why do you think there's been that erosion on the Democrat side? I guess
what I think is interesting is when you had that chart pulled up, I assume just like every other problem in our society, all of it revolves around Trump. So any issue that's ever happened in any history of the world, it's obviously the former president's fault. But this erosion looked like it started sometime in the late 90s where the curve really started diving down. And I find that fascinating because while I was not politically involved during that period of time, that was an area where the internet was still growing. Obviously, it's way more synonymous now than it was then. But to see that legacy media start dropping off, I think 96 was the date on the chart that you showed, Pete. That seems early. I would have expected that like 2010, 2012. That seems odd to me. I don't have an answer for that. That's very peculiar.
So let me just clarify I'm looking at the chart again here, and it looks like they did not. It looks like they asked the question in 72, 74, 76, and then didn't ask the question again until 96. So
that would explain it.
Right. So that 20-year gap, that's why it was like a straight line and straight lines, because they were just connecting this 20-year gap. And then they were asking it every 2 years. And that's why it kind of bounces all around after that. But even so in 96, though, you had already seen an erosion from 72% all the way down to about 52% for the people who said great deal or fair amount of trust. And you see this increase in the other two lines, taking you from, in the mid 20s and the, under 10, and they just start growing also. And then it looks like they crossed for the first time in 2012. And then they separate again, and then they cross again.
But hold on, Pete. Yeah. Isn't it disingenuous in itself to say you've been asking a question since 1972 and not ask it for 20 years and say we've been polling a question for
you can see the trend? But yeah, you can see that. No, it is fair. But you could see the trend line has gone down. So they asked it 3 times, and then 20 years goes by. I don't know why they didn't ask it again. That's bizarre. But yeah. Because that's why those lines look so.
That's why we don't trust the media.
Yes.
You know what I think is intriguing about that year? Do you know what happened in 1996? 1996, October 7th, the premiere of the Fox News channel.
And there's that one, Vince. Yeah.
It opened to 17 million cable subscribers. And I think that's a very interesting. If I were to identify 2 things that have had an impact on media, number 1 is Fox News Channel. Number 2 is the internet. Because, and this is why, at the risk of going out in another kind of territory altogether, I think this is the major reason why there is this panic by people wanting to control the internet, because they've realized they've lost control. The mainstream news media used to be the only source of news, watching ABC, CBS, NBC, and they could control that. New York Times, Washington Post, they, pretty much hand feed these organizations, give them what they want, and everybody puts out the same message. Well, it doesn't work that way anymore. Now, all of a sudden, even the internet, you've got this even though there are efforts to try to control that, you have wildfires, and you can't put messages out completely. And I think that, and people are starting to see, well, why didn't NBC tell me about this? Why didn't ABC tell me about this? There are all kinds of reasons to now doubt the objectivity and truthfulness of these organizations.
Let me go to the chat here. Okay, so it's Deva, not Diva. Thank you, Deva. The E is short. Ken is asking, is the chat on Facebook or YouTube? I am only seeing my own texts. We can see you in the chat here. It's on Facebook because we're not using YouTube, I don't believe. We're using, what is this thing? Yard Dog or something?
I think we are also on YouTube, but a vast majority of the chatters are on Facebook. So
okay. So I'm not looking at the chat on YouTube unless it's being integrated into this.
It is being integrated. His comment is on YouTube. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Drew says, hello, gentlemen. Drew from Caldwell County. Nick, welcome aboard. I am an early riser, and I start my day with you.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it. It's as I like to say, we'll be back tomorrow morning dark and early because there's absolutely no sunrise or sunshine at 5 o'clock in the morning. I can promise that.
Especially now.
Especially now, exactly.
Dave is here. Hey, Dave. Lily, 0. Jan says, some of my favorites, Vincent P. Thank you, Jan. Welcome.
Thank you.
JD Vance is a political rock star, says Drew. Great pick by Donald Trump. He is the tickets attack dog and is brilliant doing it. He does it in a smiling fashion. You know, he is
the happy warrior.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jan adds that she loves you too, Nick.
Thank you, Jan.
Left that. Okay, so not just us.
It's
Cheryl,
okay. Pete and Vince are pretty great, so I take no personal offense.
That's right. There you go. Always great to hear Vince and Pete. I listen daily, and as an early riser too, I really enjoy listening to you, Nick. Nice job. That's Cheryl.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Lynn, hello, Lynn, and Brian. Hiya. What's going on, Brian? Good to see you. Mark points out, was it the Limbaugh effect? He gave an outlet for non-leftists. Yeah, and let me see here. So Limbaugh would have been, I don't remember when he got on the air. It would have been late 80s, early 90s, I want to say. And so they weren't polling it then, but by 96, you see a big drop off. So it would have incorporated Limbaugh's rise. Yeah, and you had a lot of people that did not know that there were other people out there that thought like them until Limbaugh comes along, and fairness doctrine goes away. AM radio is sort of reborn thanks to Limbaugh. And then, of course, you had the Telecommunications Act of 96, which allowed, station ownership. It sort of set the table for all the station ownership. And you had the rise of, Randy Michaels and iHeartRadio and all of that, or at the time, Clear Channel. And, this talk syndication product I think I'm self-aware. I bash legacy media all the time, and I have no doubt that the distrust in these legacy media, mass media outlets is probably due in large part to talk radio. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm proud of that.
Amen.
Right. So I forget, Nick, I think we've talked about this before. Did you have reporter work in your background? I know Vince was he came out of TV, but he was in radio before, but you did the straight journalism thing over on TV. Did you do that also, Nick? I forgot.
No traditional reporter or any sort of journal. I always used to say, people would try and bash me and say, oh, I thought you were a journalist, when they wouldn't like one of my takes. And I would say, I've never self-identified as that, and I don't want to self-identify as that. I am not a journalist, and I'm not pretending to be one. But no, that's never been in my background. It's been all just news and opinion.
Right. Do you get that attack? I'm sure, Vince. Right. I thought you were a news person, or I thought you were a journalist. I've gotten it too over the years. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, that comes in from time to time. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's or along those lines. What do you guys? So, do you differentiate between the words journalist and reporter? Journalist, do you think they're the same thing? because I had never considered this, and then I saw somebody who on Twitter, and y'all probably know her, AP Dillon.
Sure.
And somebody called her a journalist, and they used it as an insult, like we're talking about. And she said, "I'm not a journalist. I'm a reporter. I tell you what happened. That's it." So I thought that was interesting. So like I had never considered the terms to be different. I always thought they were interchangeable, but it got me thinking.
I think they are.
Yeah.
Yes. I look over at Carolina Journal. We've got a plethora of reporters. None of them, I believe, would self-describe as a journalist, and that's more of the content that we cover. I know both of you have read stuff from the CJ site, the Carolina Journal website. Oh, yeah. That would be what I would describe as reporting. Quotes from Cooper, quotes from Harris when she was here, or whatever it is. I think it's when you get into more TV, and then of course some of the outlets, the NNO and whatnot, that's when you get into more journalism than reporting. And I think obviously what AP was saying, she would absolutely fall into that reporter, not journalism camp.
You know, one of the things I think that's a good lead into a question too that I'll throw out to you, Pete, because I wonder what your perspective would be about what's happened to journalism and reporting, how that has changed over the years, because I think there's something very fundamental that I think it's been something I've observed, but I'm curious to what your thoughts are in terms of where that's gone, how that's morphed just in the last 15, 20 years, for instance.
So I think, first off, I always try to keep in mind that, and I try to, tell people, full disclosure, I don't believe there ever was sort of this golden era of objective journalism. I don't believe it existed. I think that people were, and organizations may have been, back in the olden days, like, 150 years ago or so, they were more open about their leanings. That's how you have newspapers to this day that have the name Democrat in their name, right? Because they were the newspaper of the Democrat Party. And so, and then there came along this movement where it was like, oh, we're just objective journalists and we're just, given the straight facts and no opinion and all that. And I feel like that was more of a branding effort because probably as newspapers started folding, and you now are like the Arkansas Democrat, you need to attract Republicans in the marketplace too. So you go with this objective journalist thing. But I don't believe that really ever existed. I believe they were gatekeepers, and we all believed certain things to be true because there were no other opinions or fact patterns being presented to the public. And so that's sort of like in the background, but there has been a shift. I think there was a time when people who got into journalism or reporting work, and they were more of a blue collar background and working class background. You don't make a lot of money as a reporter, but then, when with the rise of television, people become famous, and now you have people that are attracted to that position for that reason. Not that TV, especially at the local level, pays a lot of money, but if you can work your way up, then eventually you can make a lot of money, right? Well, how do you end up then with people who go to college, get the degree, which is just a credentialing service at this point? You get the degree, but you're saddled with, or maybe your family can afford, $250,000 in debt. And you're going to go to work at a journalism outfit that doesn't pay you but $35,000, $40,000 a year. How are you ever going to pay that back, right? That degree program. So then I think what you end up happening is people that are coming from more elite status socioeconomically, they're becoming journalists, and they're now connected to the power structure. And I think that has been a big shift. And that's why you end up with newsrooms that all kind of think alike, because they come from that same lifestyle.
So I spent obviously my previous time in Wilmington, and that's a very small media market compared to Charlotte or Raleigh. And most of the, outside of a couple people, most of the TV anchors are fresh out of school. It's very much a pass-through market. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to see a 23 or 24-year-old as a reporter or journalist, as we're describing them, essentially reading talking points from a political party. You can't imagine that that came organically. Like, that had to have been browbeaten into them by their education process. They're in all likelihood not at the point of their life where their political identity is truly that strong, yet that is how all of their stories are angled. It's fascinating to watch somebody like that at that age, 6 months out of school, already be spinning things like you would traditionally see, like Martha Raddatz on ABC 40 years into her career. It's quite remarkable.
One of the things that struck me along these lines is when we talk about these reporters and anchors, for that matter, it's one of the things that's intriguing to me is to see how it's like, if you think of somebody erring on one side or the other, it's interesting that they always tend to err to the left side. It's like that's the default position. I think there was a survey done, it was back in the 80s or 90s, indicating that, I think for the first time that I heard about this, that I think it was back during the Clinton era, that about 90% of the people voted for Bill Clinton. 90% of so-called journalists voted for Bill Clinton. And it's, whenever we have a conversation about diversity and that sort of thing, it's just intriguing to me. What a coincidence that most of these folks just happen to be liberals, and they happen to, that's how they tend to vote. And this is, I think, one of the most important things is how we have a sense of honesty. And I appreciate this about you, Pete, because I think this is what you were kind of saying, is that if we're all honest about it, we all have our biases that we bring to this. And the best thing to do is just come out with it and say, this is my position. This is what I believe, because much of the time what we're watching are people who are just trying to mask bias and pretend that I'm just an objective journalist. And from the outside, it's very evident that no such thing as the truth.
Well, and it's impossible. That's the thing, is you can try to minimize it. But my standard was, so I was just down on Friday, why Nick filled in, is I went down to Atlanta and I did I spoke to a couple of classes of students, high school students, about media and the Constitution. And this was sort of the focus of the conversation with these kids. And I said, I got into journalism, mass communication, broadcast journalism. I did it because I believe in the constitutional role of the free press. Like, we are essential in media, in the press, to an informed citizenry. Otherwise, how do you self-govern? The system doesn't work if people don't know what's going on. We can't force them to know what's going on, but we have to be able to provide that information to them, right? So, so my position was always of a limited government posture. And so that informed the stories that I thought were newsworthy. And Vince, coming from a newsroom, the TV newsroom particularly, you have those meetings and people come in and all the reporters and assignment editors and everybody's sitting around and they're like, okay, we have to come up with the stories that we're going to cover today. How do you devote the resources? Because you don't have, maybe you got 2 reporters on staff during that during that time slot, so you have to send them to certain places. What's a better story? What's news? Just, answering that question alone injects bias, because all 3 of us are going to have different ideas about what is news and what is not news. And the story selection is where the first bias occurs.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely why, to your point, you want a diversity of opinion in that newsroom. Mm-hmm. So people will say, well, that's not really a story, or that's not the whole story. Here's the other side of that story, because nothing kills a great story like the other side of it. So you want to have those debates in the newsrooms. And if your newsroom isn't having that kind of discussion about a story, any story, then that's a problem in your newsroom. And I suspect that's probably the case in most newsrooms. Somebody will say, oh, I have a good idea for a story. And everybody goes, yeah, that's great. One other quick point, to Nick's comment, never underestimate the idea here that a lot of those 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, whatever, they're just not very smart. That's
You know
actually.
Can I add another? Can I add another painful dimension to this? A good part of the time, those 25-year-olds are the decision makers.
Yeah.
They're the producers.
Right. They're the
producers. They're the ones who are making the final call on what ends up being covered. That was one of the most frustrating things for me, is to see, and I mean, I don't mind being led by people, and people who have character, who've got substance, who've got something. But it just blew my mind that I'm being led by children who don't have much life experience at all.
Right.
And they're making these big decisions. And I just think, how out of touch these folks are. And I feel bad for them, having said that. So, by the way, it would be a good time to drop in on our comment section.
Presented by Craft Body Scan.
Yes. Thank the fine folks at Craft Body Scan for the opportunity we have right now to talk with you. And we appreciate your participation in this as well, as we have our conversation about things that are going on. You're welcome to text in as well, share your opinion, your thoughts about us, about the things that we're talking about, contribute to the conversation. Steve would like to know, and this is his word, if any of the dumbassery callers will show up tonight. I won't mention any names, but we all know who they are.
My phone lines are ringing off the hook over here. Do you want me to take a call?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, right. On the subject of adding to our conversation and breaking the media bias, Ken says, talk radio, and he mentions Limbaugh, if it had not come onto the scene, American tyranny would already be complete. I think there's a lot of truth to that. It's not just talk radio, because the hosts, because anybody could call in and share uncensored viewpoints. That's really good. I think Christy's talking about those young people who are coming into journalism. They probably don't know who they are. Boy, is that the truth. They have a lot of people who, they have not come into their identity and understanding of things. Dave is mentioning here, Vince has pups. How about you, Nick? Do you have any?
I'm going to answer that question with asking Pete a question, since he asked me that question on his show. Pete, do you remember the answer to my question?
I do.
Okay, what was it?
He has cats, I believe.
I have a cat, yes.
Oh, a cat.
Singular cat. I travel too much.
And I forget the name of it, but it was something
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Liberty the cat.
Liberty the cat.
That is cool. I love that name.
Yeah, so no dogs. I travel too much. Not practical, unfortunately.
Not practical to have dogs if you're traveling a lot. That is true.
They really are lower maintenance pets. I mean, there's no question about that. They take care of themselves. No question about that. Steve says, Rush saved me from left hell. Rush was my outlet, Drew says, after Reagan left office and got me through a very left-wing college and the Clinton administration. Yeah. Very, very interesting time period going through all of that Clinton era. One of the things that I think it's safe to say that you're the youngest guy in this picture, Nick.
No, I don't identify.
I'm suspecting that you're probably an old soul, though.
That's accurate. Yeah, very accurate.
I picked that up very quickly with people. And I'm very curious, as you engage people in your age group, not just within this business, where are people? Where are people's hearts and minds in, we talked about the political picture, that sort of thing, and media and all that. Where are people your age? Where are they getting their information?
So nothing was better than socializing at the bars and having a young female ask you, what do you do for work? And saying you do morning AM talk radio. I mean, it was really a real winner. They don't listen to the radio. This is for the most part, in my experience, males, females, they don't listen to the radio. They may not even have literally a television in their house. It's all YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. That's the vast majority of the information that these individuals get. And I think that's why there was a lot of and rightfully so pushback on President Trump for, he of course talked about banning TikTok when he was in office, and now he's got 3.5 million followers on it. He's reaching the voters where they are, and that's where they are in that age range. And it seems to be bleeding over into individuals in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s, because everybody's got a smartphone. Now you've got a different generation that has embraced some of these services like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. It's pretty cool to watch that happen almost in real time.
Yeah, I'm still opposed to TikTok.
Oh, so am I. I've never had an account. I won't. But
No,
if you're Trump, how can you not? Like, it's you have to be there. You're running as a major party candidate in a presidential election, and you have probably 60+% of the 35 to 25-ish voting block that is using that as their primary source of information. How can you not be there? It would be
gotta have a presence.
Political disaster to skip out on that.
Well, that's why you ban it.
Sure. There's a great solution.
Yeah, no, I was driving in today and I actually heard NPR did a story in one of their newscasts, I think it was, that they've just now somebody got a hold of a bunch of internal documents inside of TikTok, and they are fully aware of the damage that they are doing to their customer base, and they are finding ways to make it worse. Like when you're dealing with communists that are trying to destroy the country and the people in it, you're not dealing with a business. So I'm very big on trying to identify incentives, right? And so we were talking about something, I think maybe it was the journalism discussion, like what are the incentives? And so, right, the incentive for Trump is obviously get on TikTok. The incentive for everybody is get on TikTok. But a normal business, Facebook, Twitter, right, owned by somebody in America who has the same sort of, view of the business enterprise and free markets, they're going to have different incentives that they react to versus a communist party run owned entity. Their incentive is something else, right? And so generally, unless you're like the tobacco companies, you're not trying to harm your customers. But with TikTok, they actively are. They know that if they feed young people more videos of a certain kind, then it ramps up their depression. It ramps up their anxiety. They end up with body, dysmorphic ideas. And they know this. They talk about it, and they're like, do more. Tweak the algorithms. Make more attractive people show up more often in your timeline or whatever. Your For You. It's all purposeful. And so at some point now, you're not dealing with just a simple business that's trying to be, a good business partner, a good community partner. They're not trying to be that. They're trying to harm you. So at some point, then, do you have to step in and say, okay, you don't get to do this as a foreign actor, as a threat to our society, which I do believe communism is, then do you allow that to occur?
There's one angle of TikTok that is often not talked about, and it's their creator monetization structure that essentially doesn't exist. And that's why I'm not super long or super hot on TikTok. Obviously, with all the stuff Pete just said, co-sign that 100%. Eventually, the content will stop flowing because there's very little economic incentive on TikTok itself. Now, you can get TikTok famous, pull those people over to Instagram or Patreon or some other platform and make some money. But the TikTok monetization structure essentially is non-existent unless you're selling a physical product. Like if I'm selling a widget on TikTok, I can make a boatload of money. If I'm just making viral videos, unlike YouTube or some of these other platforms, there's not a very good monetization structure for creators. So I think long term, unless they figure that out, why would you continue to produce content that you are not getting paid on if you're unable to translate those viewers over to a platform where somebody is writing you a check, which is what Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, they're all doing for creators, which if they don't clean that up, I just don't see how that's practical long term.
From a user side, from the content creator side.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Chinese they'll keep the platform afloat as long as it's serving whatever political ends they need it to. But from a content creation standpoint, I mean, and look, part of it is just, it's a branding thing. It's like, that's where the kids went, versus Reels or, whatever. That's where the kids went after, mom and dad invaded their safe space on Facebook. So now they got to go someplace else. And so TikTok was it. And, no amount of adult advice like, hey, the Chinese government, these commies, they're trying to harm you. None of that is going to matter to these kids because that's where all the cool kids are. That's where everybody is. So, but from a business perspective, that's interesting. I was not aware of their monetization shortcomings, because that would be with, like, I know Twitter did it. I know Facebook does some level of that. I was not aware about Instagram either. I've got an account over there. I don't do it though. Because that one's, Instagram is another one it's just brutal, especially for young girls. But
I will say, I think all it takes is somebody like Elon Musk, who now owns Vine, which Twitter bought, to spin that back up and offer a similar monetization structure to what he's doing with Twitter, which it's 5 million impressions over 60 days makes you eligible for monetization. While that sounds like an incredible amount of views, and it is, in the grand scheme of some of these videos that receive hundreds of millions of views within hours of being posted, that could very much destroy the creators on TikTok, who will obviously be putting their content on something like Vine, or if they called it something else, because they'd be getting paid immediately on that content instead of having to translate those viewers into some other avenue for them to get paid, which is incredibly hard because all of these apps, Facebook, all of them included, want to keep you on platform. That's how they make their money from themselves, their business standpoint.
Right.
So if Elon wanted to take out TikTok, I think all he'd have to do is spin back up Vine and offer a really lucrative monetization structure, and boom, it's done real quick. And everybody used to use Vine. That's what TikTok is now. It's just what Vine was in 2013. It's the exact same platform.
Right, because Twitter bought it and then shut it down.
Like all good companies, yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Steve says, a message for the TikTokers: play a guitar instead. There you go.
Play it and record it and then upload it to TikTok and become famous.
People do that too. And then back in my day, you had to just like sing out the window of the car driving down the interstate, hoping that like a record agent heard you singing and was like, oh my gosh, they're great, let's sign them. Like, that's how you got discovered.
Outside the local AM radio station.
Yeah. Drew says, Pete, I went to UNC Asheville in the 1990s. Having been in Asheville for a time, I know you understand my dilemma as a college conservative. Having been in UNC Asheville in the 90s, having been in Asheville for a time, I know you understand my dilemma as a college. So I may have missed it. Did I miss an earlier comment?
I assume he's just talking about the challenge of being a conservative in Asheville, of all places.
Right.
That's you're surrounded.
Right.
You're probably not going to find very much support.
This was about Rush Limbaugh. Drew says, Rush was my outlet after Reagan left office and got me through a very left-wing college. So that was UNC Asheville, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's also a thing that you asked Vince earlier about, like, what's the media landscape and where are people getting their information in certain areas. And again, with my time in Wilmington, it's a very it's trending a very blue area. We're surrounded by counties like Brunswick and Pender that are very rural, still solid red, but with UNC Wilmington and the growth that they've seen, their largest degree program is marine biology. And without, of course, painting with broad strokes, I think it is accurate to say the vast majority of those.
I have a mental image.
You have a mental image
of the marine biology majors.
It tends to, not always, tends to foster a certain political ideology is all I'll say. So that's also a factor of it as well.
Right. No, that makes sense. Look, you always got to be careful talking in generalities, but the truth is general. That there is a reason why these generalities end up existing, is because there's a lot of truth to them. This is from Cecil Rogers. Hey guys, I'm thankful for y'all doing these. Question: I listen to WBT half the time on the app, and I just wanted to point out how many commercials, strongly Democratic leaning commercials, are on the app. And I was just wondering if, next message, you are all aware of that. We are very aware of that. I know that y'all have to be nonpartisan and equal time. It's actually, hang on, we can go back over that. But the same ad runs 3 or 4 times the exact ad back to back, to the point where I turn off WBT because of it. It really doesn't feel like it's equal time. So is there a way that listeners can petition or maybe do something else to make it a little more balanced? So first off, for the political advertising component, we have to take the ads. These are political ads, and it's one of the things that politicians love to do, is carve out special rules for themselves. They also get really great rates. So that's why they get to buy a lot of ads, and you have to take them. And so that's part of it. The other part of it is that Kamala Harris has a lot of money to burn, and her affiliated PACs, they got a lot of money to burn, and Trump, not so much, it seems. They're not spending as much money in these places. As for the back-to-back thing, that sounds like a problem with the software. I think that's what the whatever the auto load features are, whatever, and there's not enough inventory from Kamala to cycle through. Maybe, I don't know, but yes, we are very aware of the amount of advertising that the Harris-Walz campaign has purchased on WBT. But this is what I say: like, better here than somewhere else where it might actually make a difference. I mean,
let me ask you that, Pete, because I agree with your point completely. And it's, people are saying, well, why is Trump not buying ads on what I'll blanket as conservative talk radio? Let's just for the purpose of the conversation, call it that. I assume, and I think rightfully so, they don't feel like it's worth their time to spend money as on a station that is proclaiming their ideals and many of their same ideals and ideologies all day. But it does beg the question that you just kind of asked: why are Democrats and their affiliated groups pounding talk radio? And it's not just in Charlotte. I've been listening into stations across the country, and it's even sports talk, which I would assume tends to lean a little bit more conservative. Yeah. It's obviously a higher male, probably
there's a bigger left. The talk, sports talk, has a more leftward tilt. But so that's interesting, because I'm not aware of, like, I don't listen to the other stations in other markets, so I don't know what's being pumped through those streams. I suspect that it's because they bought with our cluster of stations, which is owned by Urban One, and Urban One is majority Black owned and run. It's a urban radio network, and so I suspect they did a buy for all of the Urban One stations. I also suspect that might be why our news director got the interview with Corinne Jean-Pierre a couple of months ago, because we were under the Urban One umbrella, and they probably thought it was going to be a friendly softball interview, and it did not go that way.
I need to do. Thank you. You gave me an idea, Pete.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Maybe this is how I can get an interview with Kamala.
You might as well give it a shot. You can ask the question. I think I heard you say, I think it was you I heard say this, which is the question I've been hammering away at. It's the only one that matters, which is, when did you know that Joe Biden was cognitively impaired? Like, when did you realize this? Or are you going to say that he still isn't? Because that's just insane. So when did you know? When did it become obvious? Did y'all see that video of him from the weekend? I think it was. And there's some lady walking him up to the podium, and she's got him, like under the arm, and she's walking him to the podium, and he's just kind of trudging along, and the hands aren't moving, that sort of rigidity of motion thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, this is bad. And like, to me, and so going back to the journalism and bias, Like, that's the story. That is the only story. And the fact that the legacy media is not focused on that, and they just instead shifted immediately to like, okay, Joe's out, here's Kamala. Oh, the vibes and joy, right? Like, that's, wait a minute. There's a reason why that coup occurred, to get him off the ticket. And it wasn't just his polling, right? So why aren't you now? Now I see Kamala Harris is making comments about Trump's mental acuity and fitness for office. Like, whoa, wait a minute. How do you get to stand up there and make that argument when the guy who is your boss and is still holding the seat, right, was kicked off the ticket for that very reason? So, like, the chutzpah, to make that argument, but we don't have a media that will ask that question, which is why I wrote the op-ed for The Blaze a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, I got to vote for Donald Trump. I've never voted for a Republican or Democrat for president, and I'm not happy about it. I'm not a Trump supporter, but I know they're going to hold him accountable. The media is going to hold him accountable. They're not going to do that for Kamala.
I'm considering writing something before the election as well. And if I can kind of preview somewhat my thought process is here, there's protection against people like Donald Trump. There are protections to keep us from any damage he could potentially do.
Right. Because of the hatred towards him from, right, the institutions.
The kinds of things that the Democrat Party has been doing to undermine our system. And basically, I describe liberalism and socialism, communism, and the people functioning in this. They're like termites. They're eating away at the foundation. And the longer they're in power, they continue to eat away at the foundation. See, that's a different thing than somebody coming along and saying, okay, I'm going to throw out the Constitution. There are protections in place. You have a Congress and you have a Supreme Court. But the kinds of things that are done through the political process, just through, quote, democracy, those are the real dangers. Those are the real dangers our face. And one of the things that it's really been on my mind a lot, if I may just throw this out there, we had a discussion before we went on air this evening, just about the issue of Social Security spending, that sort of thing. I think there's no greater danger to this country. Probably one of the greatest dangers is the uniparty. And that's the thought that went through my mind when I saw like hundreds of people have endorsed Kamala Harris. This is what I don't get. Well, I do get it. How is it that you can take somebody who's as conservative allegedly as Dick Cheney and many of these other people, and all of a sudden they're endorsing Kamala? How does that happen? And what it tells me is at the end of the day, what these people really believe in is government and big government. That's the unifying factor in all of this. They want to keep the status quo. So we're going to continue down the road of overspending. 35 trillion isn't enough. We'll hit 40 and then 45 and then 50 unless something breaks this momentum. All of these people will take us down the road to financial oblivion. And I think so. That's, there's another libertarian person I really enjoy listening to her on program. I was shocked to see that she had voted for Biden and voted for Clinton. And I'm thinking it's because of her contempt for Trump. And I'm watching this and I'm just thinking, if you're a true libertarian, how could you possibly, it just, at the end of the day, that's really what we end up with by default. It's uniparty. So with the help of the mainstream news media, I should throw that in there as well, because they like the status quo.
Well, they're part of it. I mean, it's a revolving door as well, right? People going from, Stephanopoulos is sort of your quintessential example, but there's so many. It's a revolving door. Yeah.
You're going to make me lose my dinner before I eat it.
Sorry.
Did you see that Harris has agreed to do a Fox interview on Wednesday? I'll be very curious to see. First of all, I don't know who she's doing it. I think it's Brett Baer.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting to watch. And Vince, your question, you might get big timed by Brett Baer, because I would not be shocked to have a question similar to that be asked by him. And what the dodge will be the best part of it. Maybe we'll hear that I don't know if you guys knew this, she grew up in a middle-class household or something like that.
No, you're kidding me.
So
she changed it. Now it's a working class. She changed it in front of the Spanish-speaking group. Because I thought middle-class background, lawn.
She almost had my vote.
Right. And then she was like, I come from a working class. I was like, whoa. Did she move down I said this on the show. I said, before you know it, she's going to be like, I was born a black child to a sharecropper in Mississippi, like Steve Martin, like, is this where this is heading? Like, you're going to be like this, you're going to move down the socioeconomic ladder to be like this dirt poor farmer in the deep South by the end of the campaign. It's nuts.
You're JD Vance when it's all said and done. You're literally raised in abject poverty. Yet that doesn't work for him. But that's her whole shtick. It's unbelievable.
Christy
she did it in ECU this weekend, by the way. She was there. She spoke for a whopping 25 minutes, I'll note, at East Carolina University, and talked about being. And now you've got me questioning, Pete. I don't remember if she said middle. I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look at my audio clips, but said that at least 3 or 4 times.
So, like, I'd be curious to know, does she think those two terms are interchangeable?
Probably.
Because I don't believe they are. And maybe they are, but I don't believe they are.
They're definitely not. But if you are in a Democrat elite, as she is, anybody that's below anybody, it's all the same. I mean, it's all the same. They all describe it as poor and uneducated. So that's who they're trying to pander to. It doesn't really matter.
So Mike wants to know, do each of you have a favorite combative repeat caller, the ones who constantly try to prove you are wrong?
Can I go first?
Sure.
I don't take calls because I'm on so early and the show's based on news, so I don't have that problem. Fortunately,
too easy.
Coward.
Oh yeah, that's me.
All right, Pete.
I have so many.
Yeah.
I love them all. I welcome them, except Winston. I banned him because he's an anti-Semitic bigot. Sean and Jackie. And Jackie's, by the way, Jackie doesn't call me anymore. You notice that? He calls you, Vince. Jackie doesn't call me anymore. There's who was the other? There's another fella. Drawing a blank on his name, but he's a regular too. But it like Jack's MO is always the same thing, which is I'm just wondering why, and he just keeps on. You handled it really well. I think it was last week when he called again to ask, how come you're not talking about the governor's race? And it's like, dude, what? Like, do you think that race is close? Like, why would I spend my time talking about the goods? All he wants you to do is to attack Mark Robinson. That's what he wants from you. He wants you, and that's why I told him at that last News and Brews. I said, dude, I'm a limited government conservative libertarian type of person. Like, you're not going to make me a progressive. Like, this is my view. So who's yours?
Oh man, it would probably be Sean is probably the top of the list there, and trying to find some inconsistency and where I also get callers just in general questioning my because of the spiritual profession of mine. They try to find inconsistencies in, for instance, in their minds, how can you support Donald Trump? And how can and I tell you, you're going down the wrong road. I'm not here as a spokesperson for anybody.
Right.
So when I ask questions or when I challenge something, it's equal. I've had, and I take a lot of heat, especially for the questions I raise about Donald Trump as well. So that's most of it. It's most of it just an effort to try to show some sort of inconsistency.
Monica. Hey, Monica. I believe that is Mike's wife, Monica. Hello. Pete had a good one at News and Brews. LOL. I did. That was Jack. I called him an idiot. And then hey, question from the audience. Hey, it's Jack.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh my gosh. And I was like, bring it. I take those calls first. I want those calls more because that, that allows me to make my argument and to let people hear the counter. And it's helpful that they don't argue very well at all. But then again, if I had to defend their positions too, they would be exceedingly difficult. I don't know if I'd be able to do it either. So surprisingly, Saturday Night Live has Biden down. The YouTube replays are hysterical and sad. Sarah, I have not had a chance to go watch them. I saw my Twitter feed blow up with people with clips of SNL, and apparently they dragged Biden and even Kamala to a degree, which might be a bit of a canary in the coal mine there if SNL is mocking Harris and Walz. I think they got Jim Gaffigan up there playing Tim Walz.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. Can I make a pitch to people? They have admonished Joe Biden and his failures for 4 years, and here we are. Saturday would have been 24 days in front of the election. That's the first time that they want to dip their toe in the water of making fun of it. It's so unabashed, and the problem, and like you just said, Pete, conservatives lap this stuff up and go, ha, look at this, Saturday Night Live. Let's share this YouTube video and get them 300 million views 24 days before the election. Don't fall into the trap of outlets that have done nothing to help you and your viewpoints, trying to cozy up to you or making fun of something that they should have been mocking for 4 years, 24 days in front of the election. We fall for this trap too often.
I totally agree, but counterpoint, every little bit helps. Even at this late stage, right? Because if that helps to calcify the narrative, even at this late stage, then maybe some people look at that. Here's the thing too, though. They're not making those jokes because they're, like you said, cutting edge. They should have been doing those jokes a long time ago. They're doing it now because it's safe. And that means, I look at that as that's telling me that is already in that world. It's now become okay to talk about it on the left. That's what that indicates to me. Now it's okay. Now it's safe to do so, which I read as sort of a sign that we're not the only ones that have seen it. They see it too.
I'm very curious about something as we continue our conversation here. Again, a shout out and a thanks to the folks at Craft Body Scan for helping to make this conversation and interaction possible. I wanted to ask this question of both of you, beginning with Nick Craig here. I've just had this feeling the past few days, some of it by pollsters and others, but I'm just seeing in some of the conversation we're having too about what's happening with entertainment media. It feels like there's been a shift these past few days in this presidential contest, that there is this sense that Kamala seems to be losing steam. And I think one of the other examples of this, the desperation of the media and the way they're doing the fact checking, but also the Obama thing. I thought that was absolutely, I'm having a blast. I mean, think about it. Here I am, a black man. Back in 1996, I could not find, other black conservative voices. I mean, maybe Walter Williams on Rush's show, but
that's some good company, though. That's some good company.
Absolutely.
Soul, that's some good company.
But I'm thinking now there's a multitude of black voices, male and female. Oh my goodness. All weekend, they were just absolutely skewering Barack Obama about him trying to shame them into voting for Kamala. And it feels like there's so many elements of this that it feels like, anyway, I would just cautiously say, there's one pollster who was just saying he feels like Kamala has plateaued. Mm-hmm. Is this the feeling you're getting, starting with Nick?
Yeah. So plug for Pete's podcast. Download hour 1 of Pete's show from Friday. I did the entire first hour on this, Vince, and what I described it as we approach the lovely Halloween holiday we all remember having a little bit of a sugar high when you're a child and you eat like 9 boxes of Nerds and pound a bunch of Snickers. You're bouncing off the wall because you can't go to sleep. That was Kamala Harris. I mean, she had her sugar high. She wasn't Joe Biden. She was different. She was something to get excited about. And regardless of whether it was her, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, any candidate, Biden's ceiling was so low, any Democrat candidate, literally any Democrat candidate, was going to have what I have described as a sugar high in terms of polling and public opinion. But just like with an actual sugar high on Halloween, you wake up the next morning and you're good to go. And that's what's happened now. And it's all starting to plateau and level back down. And I am shocked. The first thing I do every morning at dark 30 is refresh Real Clear Politics in their most recent polls. And nothing, I mean, not one poll is trending in her direction over the last like 2 weeks. This isn't just like 2 or 3 days ago. It's been a couple weeks now of just day after day, the margins essentially evaporating for her. And it's at the point now where I don't think there's enough runway to course correct. 22 days in front of the election. What's going to, I keep asking myself the question, what is going to happen that is going to pull her over the finish line in 22 days? The economy's not going to sporadically fix itself. What really is going to be the thing that she can be the savior of for the next 22 days? I just don't see what it is. I just don't. So I think the sugar high's over for her. And yeah, I think you're spot on, Vince. The plateau is here and it's real.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a plateau. The sugar is just empty calories, empty energy, not long-term, not built to last. But that was the whole point, right? They didn't want her built to last. That's not her role. They're not looking for a candidate for the long term to be an awesome executive. They just need another husk, and she is it. And so they're going to, I mean, like, yeah, you're running out of runway. I completely agree. But that's a feature, not a bug. If they could have had a shorter runway, they would have preferred that, to just ride the sugar high and then have the election. The problem for them is that it went a little too early. You know, they didn't time it right. And so now they're going to end up slowing down before the end of the runway. To your comments about, and I heard your discussion about this today, Vince, on the show about black male voters, particularly. I've said for years, if black voters vote like every other racial demographic, splitting their votes more evenly, not overwhelmingly for Republicans. They don't have to break for Republicans, but if the black vote is no longer 90-10, if it's something like 60-40, Democrats don't win anymore.
They're done.
Right, they're done. And so that's why this is more of an existential threat for them, for the Democrat Party, is to watch this erosion. And it's not just with black males. It's with Hispanic males. It's with white males. You're seeing this widening gap between females and males. Males are becoming more Republican and women are becoming more Democrat, except for married women. They are generally more Republican. So like, and that's not good for the society. But it is, I've been saying this for years also, this is that we're in the middle of a realignment of the political parties. I have no idea what the parties are going to look like, if they even still exist. But they're going to look a lot different if they do.
Before we came on here, I saw the Trump campaign posted a new ad that I guess it said coming soon to TV. And it starts off, Vince, with Charlemagne, who's the host of the Breakfast Club, which is a very popular radio show. And it starts off with Charlemagne reading about transgender surgeries in prison. And it's him reading about it.
I remember that.
Shocked. And that's it just said coming to a TV near you. And so absolutely, it's obvious that Trump and Republicans are attacking this crowd and trying to really lock in their vote.
If they red pill Charlemagne, if they can red pill him, then this is over.
It's a problem. That's a big problem for them.
That's a big problem for Democrats.
Yeah.
I have not heard such a rational discussion since Rush signed off. That's very kind. Monica wanted to know, what is your opinion about people who cancel you if you don't agree with your political views? People already feel afraid to say anything. Their business gets shut down. That is not democracy. So the heckler's veto, cancel culture. I think to a large extent the fever is starting to break on that. I think that might be happening. But I do know, in fact, this weekend, we talked to some family friends, and they said that they had just traveled, and he particularly on purpose wore his Trump hat or Trump shirt. And he said people were coming up to him, and this was up in the Northeast, and they were like your shirt, like your hat, but they were doing it in these hushed tones, like they were still afraid because they know their surroundings and they don't want to say, because they don't want to incur that wrath. But it's like, if you got something, like if you like the shirt, just, own it. But people are afraid. And I think if people realize that no longer carries purchase, the cancel culture no longer carries purchase, I think then it's sort of the preference cascade, much like black male voters, especially. There's a preference cascade. It's slowly at first and then very quickly. Yeah. Boom. It's like, oh, I'm the only one, like Vince was saying. And then it's, holy cow, look at all these people that are standing with me.
There's plenty of company around now. Some other comments on our comment line. Steve says, I was once anti-electoral college until I understood how and why it works for all Americans. That's pretty awesome, Steve, for you to make that discovery and realization. It is so, so important. Lily would like to know, why don't the Democrats have primaries? Yes, I got as many votes as Kamala. Hey, that's
congratulations. Have you ever thought about running for president?
Maybe I should. Let's start a write-in campaign tonight.
I got about 70 write-in votes for mayor in Wilmington last election cycle. Nice. Not a resident of the city, ineligible for the contest, but I'm enshrined forever in Board of Elections history as a non-eligible write-in.
So you got more votes than Kamala Harris did.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Yes. Maybe I should run for president.
Maybe so. Drew, commenting about your reference to Real Clear Politics, has Trump with 302 electoral votes.
Yeah, that just happened this afternoon.
Yeah, we did that. We covered that today on the show too. With the if you take if you take the polling, I covered this on, I think, Thursday last week. If you take the polling and look at, so I'm a big trends guy. Like I like to look at where things were and where they are, what are the trend lines. And this time, 4 years ago, this time 8 years ago, Trump was down in the polls, 6 points, 8 points, swing states down even more. And he overperforms every time. He overperforms in the election. And so Harris being up by 3 has Democrats terrified.
See, that's what I've been hearing for the past few days, that 3 is not a good number at all.
Margin of error.
Not a good number. Michael would like to say, welcome to 1110. Nick, you are making a mark quickly, and appropriately so. I didn't want to take I think Bernie put up that those
your screen share.
Put those back up, because I think it's kind of interesting to see those again. On this day in history, what are we seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, look at that. Biden up by 9, Clinton up by almost 7, and Harris is only up on the national. But that's the national, so it's tough. But you go looking through the the swing state numbers there. Biden leads all of them. Clinton leads all of them, except for Arizona. But the actual performance doesn't. Clinton did not win North Carolina. Biden did not win North Carolina.
So the question is this: have the pollsters finally figured out how to equate the Trump voter into their polls? This is the 3rd time that he's been on a ballot.
That's possible.
Unfortunately, we won't know until election night. I mean, that's kind of the unknown. Have they been able to finally crack the code on polling Trump the 3rd time around? If not, and it's the similar polling to 2016 and 2020, and I don't say this lightly, I mean, it will be an electoral bloodbath for the Democrats. If
don't say that. Don't say bloodbath.
Polls, if these polls look anything like they're supposed to. Now, if they figured out how to poll the Trump voter, then these numbers are concerning for both camps. I mean, because these are essentially, I mean, what, 10, 15,000 votes in some of these swing states are going to decide. That's in non-existent margins.
Yeah. That's going to be really, yeah. And so it's too close to call. If, like you say, they figured out how to finally poll. I'm not so sure, because if you look at the way the Harris campaign has shifted its strategy by doing all of these interviews now and saying really stupid things, I don't think you do that if you don't believe these numbers are bad. You know, I think their change in strategy indicates their internals are looking very, very concerning for them. Oh, I forgot to mention caller Mike Daisley, and Tony, the two callers from earlier. The Mike Daisley, he calls you too. He doesn't call me so much anymore. Tony does, though.
We were talking about write-ins earlier. Michael says, I'm thinking of doing a write-in for governor. Whose name would you write in? By the way, this is another curious thing that's worth a conversation at some point. You know, the precarious situation that's going on now in the North Carolina governor's race, which, as we've commented, is not much of a race. What do you know what the rationale is? And maybe one of you guys can answer this question. Why is it that at this stage, even if somebody were to start a write-in campaign, it would be to no avail? Who put these rules? I mean, I'm obviously assuming the two political parties rigged this for their purposes, but maybe that's a stupid question. But it would seem that why couldn't somebody just decide, especially in this day and age with the internet, it's altogether possible somebody could do a quick 30-day campaign?
The only way to do it would be to have somebody with a sample ballot at every voting location with your name, with the little check next to the write-in button, and then your name. Like, outside of that, I mean, people can't even go. Vince, I know this is going to be shocking for you to hear. People can't even go inside of the ballot box and correctly check the right parties that they want to vote for. I mean, it says R&D next to their name, and people still somehow screw that up. They go, I didn't know that person was a Democrat. I'm like, well, what do you mean? It says D right next to their name. How do you not understand that? So
unless you got dead, I thought D meant dead.
And you still voted for them. So that's even worse. But unless you literally had a ground game in every county at every early voting location for the next 17 days, people don't understand, and they can't be convinced, or they don't even see it.
See, but my understanding is, even if you were to do that, I don't think that would be recognized by the Board of Elections.
You have to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that part of it.
Yeah, they've got to be qualified. So in order to have a write-in candidate's votes counted, then you have to be qualified as an official write-in candidate.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. So you can't just do something like after all the polls close, or the registration for announcing candidacy and all that time is, then you can't just buy billions of dollars in advertising for a write-in campaign over the course of 3 weeks and just buy up every ad space, write me in, and then have your votes count. Even if you did get more votes than everybody else, you would have to file the paperwork to say you are running as a write-in campaign, as a write-in candidate. That's my understanding of it. And my guess as to why that's the case is because Democrats controlled the state for 150 years and they wrote the laws in order to prevent that from happening. That's my bet.
See, I'd love to see a reform to change that. I think that's entirely antiquated.
Yeah, I think you would have more write-in campaigns, but it also, you think about the back end processing on that, though. You think it takes a long time to count votes now when people can't even, to Nick's point, check a box or fill in a bubble, with a pencil.
Very complicated, Pete. Very complicated. Right. Okay.
You imagine trying to check the spelling on all of these names
Kaliner or Coakley trying to write that in on a ballot. Good luck.
Right. And then think about all of the challenges. You're going to have Mark Elias parachuting into North Carolina, inspecting every single, write-in name. And did they spell it exactly correctly? That could be any Vince Coakley. It's spelled E-L-Y, not L-E-Y, And yeah, I could see there being problems with that, but I don't know if that was the real reason that they initially did it. I suspect they probably did it because they were just trying to limit competition, especially in smaller locations, smaller towns, county races, school board races, where a write-in campaign could be very successful. That probably, because you got to remember, 150 years, Democrats had this machine in place, and it wasn't just at the state level. I mean, it was down into the counties and the towns, and you had, sheriff's offices. It was a machine from, bottom up. And so you didn't want people getting access to those levers of power inside your machine.
Yep.
All right, let's see here. We got Drew says Bill Maher has already has really trashed Harris and the left as much as Trump, and has no use for those who protest and bash Israel in their campaign against terrorism. Yeah, Bill Maher is getting pretty close to swallowing the whole red pill. So, I'm thinking of doing a write-in for governor, says Michael. Well, there is Mike Ross, and then there's another guy named Vinny something or other from the Constitution Party. I forget his last name. Let me
pull up my sample ballot here. I can tell you exactly.
Hello, Rodney. Welcome. Dale Falwell, Drew asked. Nick, welcome to 1110. Bill Graham. I like both of them. They are desperate. Matt Tollison. Hello, Matt. And Real Clear Politics has Trump with 302 electoral votes, right? What does it say that the Harris campaign accepted an XRP crypto donation while the SEC has been actively suing the parent company for years? Well, I think it says exactly what you think it says. Why don't the Democrats have primaries? I feel like I've read some of these or heard some of these. I've not heard such a rational discussion. Well, we are rational, I'd like to think. We need to push people to vote in primaries to get the best party candidate. I believe it's usually the extremists who usually choose the candidate.
The extremists that vote. I mean, it's not that they're choosing; they're the only ones that the true party folk on the right and the left are the only ones that play in the primary. Yet, if you look at the coverage of the last couple of weeks, it's the same individuals that don't vote in primaries that are dumbfounded, that are considered classify themselves as Republicans that can't wrap their head around how Mark Robinson is the nominee, yet they have never voted in a Republican primary. Right. The ignorance is unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. The angries and the most activated and motivated vote in the primaries.
Yes.
And then the quote mushy middle, as Rush called them, right? Then they're the ones that you're like trying to sway in the general. And then it's like I hear people say this thing. This is out of a country of 350 million people. These are the best candidates we get. And it's like, well, did you like spend money, donate time?
Let me look up on the voter board website. I can see you haven't voted in a primary in 25 years. So congratulations.
Sandra thanks us all for what we do. I've been a WBT listener for 70 plus years, 24/7. Y'all are appreciated. Thank you, Sandra. Appreciate that.
That's wonderful.
I should have worded it better. This election would be like 1980, close until the very end, and then a landslide for the Republicans. Oh, Bo Thompson joins in. Yep. Greetings, Bo.
Hey, Bo.
Isn't this past your bedtime, Bo?
Probably.
What about my bedtime? What about my bedtime? But Bo's not on until
we got to wrap up here.
True.
That's true. Plus, also, I think I had the record for going the longest with Brett Winterble, and I don't want to jeopardize my. Well, I guess I would hold the record. I would be first and second place. I know that friend Pete, and it was awesome to hear how people reacted to him wearing a Trump hat and shirt. Good job, gentlemen. Welcome, Nick. Look forward to the elections and your coverage. Appreciate support. Your thanks. I feel like I skipped something from Ken earlier because Ken's involved in the Convention of States project, and I believe all three of us are on board with that. Well, I guess Nick, are you on board with this Convention of States project?
For the most part, yeah. For the most part, there's some things that I disagree with the setup, but for the most part, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the concept, I should say.
Yes, absolutely.
And I fear to estimate how many hours a week you work. It's too many. Christy will tell you it's too many. I view a write-in as sending a message to the party that they need to do better. Yeah, that's fair.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
This idea that the party has to do better, I think, is a misnomer. Like now, yes, there are factors. For example, the Republican Party or the Democrat Party can promote a candidate internally. Now, based on their plans of organizations, they're not allowed to. So there are ways to skirt those rules. But the party doesn't choose the candidate. At least in North Carolina, on the Democrat side, that's not the case. On the Republican side, it absolutely is true. I mean, look at what happened with Michelle Morrow and Kathy Truitt.
Primary.
every Republican that is an elected official in North Carolina came out and endorsed Catherine Truitt for DPI, and she lost in the primary. So you're not really sending them. You're not flipping the bird to the party. The party doesn't choose that stuff. Obviously, if they did, they would not have had Michelle Morrow as their candidate. She bolstered a grassroots body and was able to unseat the current sitting DPI secretary in a primary. So I don't really understand this anger at the quote unquote party. They're not voting.
I would say not a write-in as the sending a message. I withhold my vote, or I vote for somebody else on the ballot if I don't like who comes through the primary, which I've done for president. But the primary is where you express that view. And in North Carolina, open primaries, you can do so.
But to me, it's more than just expressing the view. I mean, if you're truly dissatisfied with the candidates that you have, and again, I'll use the Michelle Morrow example. What did her people do that were very unhappy with Catherine Truitt? They organized, they got to all these voting locations. They pulled her across the finish line. It's not enough to just vote differently in the primary if you're super passionate about this stuff. There are plenty of ways and things to get involved, whether it be time, treasure, or talent. And most folks are unwilling to do that. Yet they're the first to complain, unfortunately.
Yeah. Also over on our comment line, several interesting questions. I'm going to come back to one of these questions. Bo answering why he's still up. Too much sports tonight. Don't know if I will sleep at all. Nick, the Trump ad showing Kamala promoting the prisoner sex change just ran on Monday Night Football.
Oh,
there you go.
That's a really good place to do that. No question about that. 65-year listener. Thanks for sharing your time and expertise. Watched Vince in his TV years, too. Oh, my goodness. That's ancient history. Thank you. And we appreciate the fact that you are with us this evening. Someone posted here. This is a good question, especially for Pete Kaliner. Do you each feel, starting with Pete Kaliner anyway, we want to hear your perspective as well, Nick. Do you each feel voting for Western North Carolina will be handled fairly?
Well, you are talking about a part of the state that doesn't have a squeaky clean record of clean elections. In fact, there are quite a few examples of chicanery occurring in elections. I mean, there was a big story about a former state senator who got a box when the Ponders, Zeno and his brother Zeb, I think, forget their names, but the Ponder machine out in Haywood County, and it was their political machine. It was a Democratic machine, and when one of them died at the estate sale, he bought a stuffed ballot box, like literally the ballot box, because he ran against one of these Ponder machine guys. So it's all relative. But I do think like that while there will be opportunities for chicanery, I think you've also got a lot of, they say Asheville is a blue dot in a sea of red. And there are a whole lot of people in that sea of red that are probably not going to take too kindly to stuffing ballot boxes against Donald Trump. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered the question. I don't know if I can.
We had an article up on Carolina Journal today, and I don't know Western North Carolina like Pete does, so I won't opine on whether it will be fair or not or whatever. But they did report, at least the State Board of Elections said that 70% of the scheduled early voting sites will be opened on Thursday. And to me, that seems like a huge victory with some of the pictures out of the West. The fact that 70 are going to be open this Thursday is is a miracle. If the number was 50, I wouldn't be surprised. If it was 40, I wouldn't be surprised with some of the damage and devastation out there. So that's a really good sign that 70% of those sites will be open. Plus, the General Assembly laxed some regulation on where you can turn in your absentee ballot if you live in one of those 25 counties. But yeah, the question I've always had, Pete, is, okay, you may have the option to vote, but is that even going to be on your mind as you're literally mourning the loss of loved ones and looking at your entire community that was literally washed down a river? It's not that you can't vote. Do you even care to vote? And that's, you can't measure that. And that's the real tough part of it is it's not top priority for a vast majority of people. I mean, they might just not care.
Yeah. Nobody
and for good reason.
Yeah, no, and nobody knows because you can't poll it.
Exactly.
You can't put any kind of polling out into the field. And I keep trying to remind people that the area of devastation is like the size of Belgium. It's 25 counties. It's topographically, goes up to 6,600 feet high and it drops down to 1,100 feet. Elevation changes. You've got slope failure. You've got roads that are gone. Like the size and scope of the disaster is unprecedented. And so we just don't know if people are going to be able to or willing to. I could see why some people might be fired up to go vote because they feel like government let them down in its response. But I could also see where they don't, because they've got other things they got to focus on.
On a lighter side with the election, Bo Thompson mentions, by the way, nearly 38 years later, Dana Carvey is the ringer this year, returning to play Biden. Even if you've given up on SNL long ago, watch the opening sketch this season for Carvey as Biden, and Steve agrees Dana killed it.
Yeah.
So that's got to be entertaining. I remember that Bush impersonation. That was good stuff. And Church Lady. I enjoyed Church Lady.
Yes, the old Church Lady. So, all right, I'm going to call it because it's 8:32. So I think that's actually longer than I went with Brett Winterble. I don't know if it's a me thing or not. I'm sorry, because I know Nick gets up very early. But we want to thank Craft Body Scan for doing the Talktoberfest 2024 with us. Remember, we've got the big event coming up on the 30th. It's at 7:00 at Heist Brewery and Barrel Arts. John Hancock is going to be there. So I've been told. Or maybe somebody just dressed like John Hancock. I don't know, for Halloween. No, so he's going to be there. That's the plan. And would love for y'all to be there. All the details are at WBT.com. You guys got anything else you want to say? Any last words?
Nick?
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Look forward. It's been a great couple of weeks with WBT, and I'll be out there on Charlotte on the 30th. So looking forward to meeting everybody in person.
Nice.
Yeah, one quick thing too, just a little bit of fun. Someone made mention the fact they remember watching me on television years ago, and one of the lines we would always use, in fact, Bo actually had, yes, he did it again. Bo, he had to have told Bernie to put this up. Thanks for making us your choice for news. So we can say the same thing. Thank you for choosing us tonight. Thank you to Craft Body Scan.
And thanks everybody in the chat box for watching. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Good night.